Okay, good evening, everybody. We take our places. Okay, so welcome to this evening's meeting of the Scrutiny Committee of Melton Borough Council. I'll just remind you that we will, as usual, be using the audio-visual system this evening, and the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. Members are asked to physically raise their hands in the usual way to indicate they wish to speak. Please switch mobile phones to silent, unless, like me, you forgot it when you came out of the house on the way here. Should you need to leave the room during the meeting, unless it's an emergency evacuation, please use the marked exit and entrance. Just remind you of the evacuation procedure. If you have to evacuate the chamber, please leave by the exit, emergency exit, and assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist persons who require any assistance. Public recording of the meeting. There is legislation that allows the public to film, record, or use social media at a council meeting. This must not be disruptive to the good order of the meeting, nor include any filming or recording of the public seating area. Okay, just before we get on to the agenda, just to introduce myself, I'm Mike Brown, Chair of the Scrutiny Committee, and I have here with me tonight, to my right, Michelle Rogers. I have to remember. Who's the director of lots of things, communities and other stuff, housing and communities. I always forget the title. Adam Green from Democratic Services. And we also have tonight Ryan Ebdale, who's with us to present the report that's further down the agenda. So welcome to you all. Right, on to the main agenda. First item is apologies for absence. I don't believe we have any apologies, and I think we've got a full house. Yeah, everybody's here. Second item on the agenda is to confirm the minutes of the scrutiny meeting held on the 25th of June 2026. Before I move to confirm the minutes, are there any issues people want to raise regarding accuracy or otherwise? I'm going to look all the way around the room. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, I've got 3 items. The first one is to do with declarations of interest. The 2 interests need to be separated. The sentence where it says she has been advised that she can remain in the meeting and participate is for the second interest for the Waterfield Leisure Centre only, not for the family member owning a second home that is rented out. Also on this, to add to the interest of the Waterfield Leisure Centre, that I am a member only insofar as using the facilities and equipment. And the second one is to do, there's no mention of the stockyard units to add future new units instead of these units. This is on page 9 on the minutes of the agenda on the 23rd of April 26. It is the 3rd paragraph from the top, and it's to do with the last sentence where it reads, encouragingly, early inquiries have already been received for these units, indicating market interest and demand. Where it says these units, it was to be changed to future new units. I said this at the last scrutiny meeting on the 25th of July. And the third one, right, is page 7, 2nd paragraph from the bottom, along the 3rd line down, where it says, it was confirmed that the council licenses and inspects HMOs. The council does not license HMOs. Yeah, do they? Oh, right, because as far as I knew from that from the last time, that we don't license them. It's the HMOs that licenses them. We inspect the premises, but it's the HMOs that license it. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Gordon, so yeah, the local authority issues a licence for a HMO if the property meets a threshold for licensing and the conditions are met. Those licences are published on a register. This is correct, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Allnut, you indicated.
Yes, Chair. With respect to the same paragraph about HMOs, the point that I raised was a question to the leader about the fact that licensing HMOs was a regulatory function, but we have a portfolio holder with a responsibility, according to the Constitution now, for licensing HMOs. And I was asking the question whether that was compatible, because I'd always been told by the monitoring officer that the executive branch, the cabinet, must not get involved in licensing, as with taxis and so on. That was the root of my question, and that's not recorded at all. I was happy with the answer, but it wasn't a critique of the portfolio holder in question on that particular point. And I just feel that my point is not covered by that minute.
Would you like to suggest a specific wording that you feel would cover that?
I would suggest that a member raise the question of whether or not the regulatory function of HMO licensing was compatible with having a member of the cabinet also responsible in some way for that function. That was the question I asked. I don't quite know whether I really got an answer. But... Thank you.
Put my microphone on when I ask that question. Are there any other issues related to the minutes? If not, with those changes that are being captured by Adam, could I have a proposal to approve the minutes? Councillor Atherton, Councillor Allnut, seconding. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. The minutes are approved. Right, item 3 on the agenda is response tracker. Now, I think I need to say something about this. There were issues raised, I think, by Councillor Allnut at the last meeting, and we noted them, but on reflection, when I was reviewing the minutes of the meeting, I felt that we ought to actually agree what our follow-up on those would be. And these are the items that came under review of the forward plan. And you were asking that we should consider a number of points. And in respect to points A and C, I agree to note the points, and I will be writing to the leader seeking clarification on those. And I think we just need to be a bit tighter in capturing input at the meeting in future, because the norm is that the Scrutiny Committee submits a report to Cabinet on the issues that we review on the substantive agenda, i.e. tonight we're dealing with social value. And therefore there was no referral to Cabinet following the last meeting because we hadn't had a substantive item because it was leader's presentation. So I'll be writing to the leader on those points, asking those questions and seeking clarification. Councillor Allnut.
One of the other minor points was that in this debate, discussion, I did ask for a report to be given to members and indeed the public about the outcome of the car parking survey, where we had initiated a survey through the medium of the council tax leaflet, asking people their preferences about the type, how they would pay for car parking charges. And I asked that question because the leader had announced at the extraordinary meeting, I think, or the annual meeting possibly, that a decision had been taken. It would be cash, card and app. And I just wanted the results of the survey to be made known as you know, the people have gone to the bother of answering the question. I thought that was relevant. And I just wondered if should that be on the track, because I haven't seen the results of the survey.
I'm going to rule no, it shouldn't be on the tracker. I mean, it was a question you raised, and other members raised questions of the leader at that meeting. My recollection, his answer was, yes, we will do that. And therefore, it was a direct response to a question. I think the items I've put on the tracker were more, in terms of normal business of the committee, looking at the forward plan, and therefore I thought it was appropriate. So we didn't lose them, that the matters have been raised under consideration of the forward plan. That's why I asked them to be put on the tracker in this way. I think with other questions that might arise, that wouldn't necessarily be the appropriate way to deal with it. All right. Okay, any other questions regarding the tracker? Shall I move on, therefore, to declarations of interest? Are there any declarations of interest that members want to make? Can we make sure we capture them very thoroughly, Adam? Councillor Gordon.
Yes, I am a member of the Waterfield Leisure Centre, but only insofar as using the facilities and equipment. I've been advised that I can remain and participate. I'm also a council flat tenant, and I shall leave the room if I feel I shouldn't stay in if anything comes up. I also have a sister who has a second home which she rents out, and I will leave the meeting should anything in respect of this come up.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gordon. I'll leave it to your judgment if you feel that conflict arises. My view would be, given the business for tonight, that it's unlikely that you should need to exclude yourself, but as always, it remains your choice. Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Thwaites.
I mean, he's got a button that can cut me off. Yeah. You didn't tell me that while I was chair of planning, did you? I'll talk to you later about that, Adam. Because of there's some elements in this where it's talking about volunteer work, and obviously I'm a trustee or connected with a couple of different charities that may call for that work. But I assume as this isn't a decision body or anything like that, that there's no conflict of interest with that.
And I would take the view, and I think it's supported by clarification from the monitoring officer in the past, that because we're not a decision-making body, and because that link is fairly tenuous, that there shouldn't be a conflict. Yeah.
Policy, the extent of.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Atherton.
I'm a trustee of the Melton Education Award, just so if anything comes that way, I excuse myself.
Okay, I don't think we've ever had so many declarations in one meeting. Are there any other, Councillor Chubb and Councillor Cox? Councillor Chubb first, then Councillor Cox.
I'm also a trustee of MadMac as well, which I'd just like to declare. Should I is connected with that, I'll leave again. Thank you.
We're going around the charities of Melton, so I'm obviously employed by the Melton Learning Hub.
Thank you, Councillors Cox and now I don't want anyone to feel left out. Councillor Holmes.
I'm a trustee at the Melton Museum. Don't think it.
Any more takers?
Can I just ask if Councillor Ziggy Atherton should declare an interest because she's married to a member of the cabinet, and
Want to get divorced?
and we, if we're scrutinising the cabinet, has she got an interest? In fact, is anyone interested in the cabinet?
I'm going to declare declarations closed on that note. And thank you for that. I mean, again, my view would be, it is of the nature of elected members that they're involved in various ways in the community. And I rely on your judgment if you feel specific discussions or items under discussion touch upon your particular area of activity in a way that you feel it would be appropriate to exclude yourself or ask for clarification at that point. Okay. Thank you very much. Right, we move on to item 5, which is review of the forward plan. Now, as I always state, this is presented to scrutiny. We're not obliged to comment on it, but we can comment on it. Any comments made, I will seek clarification from the committee as to what we want to do about them this time. Okay, are there any comments that people wish to raise? Councillor Cox.
Sorry, I had a finance meeting today, just because of the large amount of carryovers that are occurring this year. My understanding is that there will be a meeting later this month of the cabinet with the senior. Sorry, is it? Oh, it's on. Yeah, no, it's all right, Elaine. I'll move it. So I had a finance meeting today, and my understanding is that there are significant carryovers this year, of which now we've had the decision around LGR. There's going to be a review of how those carryovers will be spent. It's significant in that it's nearly 900,000, I think, and looking at some of those items that have been rolled over multiple years, I think there might be a number of decisions where pieces of work are ceased because of the work of LGR taking priority. I just wonder how that will fit into the forward plan. I know Councillor Allnut raised in our tracker around the capital budget, I think in particular probably the stockyard, but I think there's some big outstanding items on there like upgrades to IT systems and things that would be potentially pertinent to scrutiny.
Okay, can I just ask, Councillor, just to be get specific, are there specific items in this forward plan in front of us now that relate to that?
No, I think it's the principles of where we say we're incurring over 50,000. There are a number of carryovers, so it's how we feature that in, or do we just say to cabinet, okay, you do what you want with £900,000 of carryovers?
So I mean, I have to be careful about, you know, the role of scrutiny here. We have the forward plan in front of us. This is an opportunity to pick up on any issues listed in the forward plan for comment. And if they're not listed in the forward plan, that's why I'm trying to be helpful here. If we can pick out specifics in that list that we want to raise concerns about, that would be extremely helpful, rather than just a generalised, there's an issue with carryovers. Councillor on that?
Chair, we have a forward plan, July to October. And the items in there, fine as they stand. I'm concerned about the items that are not in there. Now, are you saying I ought not to raise that now, or may I?
I mean, again, I'm trying to stick to what's in front of us as a committee and what our remit is, and our remit is to look at the forward plan. If we're getting into wider debate about the finances of the council, I'm not sure that falls within our remit here tonight.
I don't want to get involved in a debate about anything really, but I think that in the forward plan, there ought to be reference made to the whole LGR process. So there ought to be something in there because we haven't got many months. And I think if we're looking at a strategic document that is talking about the work that's going to be done, I think it ought to be in there in some form. I don't want to be prescriptive about what should be in. That's a different matter. That can be debated elsewhere. But I think it ought to be in there, really. That's all I'm saying. And indeed, the something we are awaiting, it may be in there, and that's the process of creating a town council, which is sort of linked with LGR. So those are the two things I can't see there. If I'm wrong and they are in there, then I apologise.
Okay, thank you. Michelle.
Thank you. If I could just offer a few reflections. So as a committee, when you set your work programme for the year, I know we've drifted into work programme, but it feels that was where the conversation has gone. You've taken a decision that rather than to have a specific meeting or item focus on LGR, that you would look at each work programme item through that LGR lens and give that particular feedback to the Cabinet on the implications and impact relating to that. You have also included within your work programme the scrutiny around the revised corporate strategy. That is the programme of work that will follow A, the reflections of the decision around LGR, and B, consideration of resourcing and priorities in relation to that. So that is a key opportunity. I'm not clear at this stage, having had the decision released today, what our schedule and work programme is beyond those initial briefings, but very happy to take back that query to get clarity about key briefings, decision-making points and role for various meetings and committees. The point about the Town Council is noted. Obviously, there has been the consultation exercise in relation to that. Very happy to take away an action just to clarify any next steps in relation to that. Adam, have you got a further update?
Yeah, the town council will be a council decision and therefore would not feature on this forward plan. This forward plan is a notice of key executive decisions. So anything to do with the town council would be for full councils and not necessarily reflected in that. It would go to a full council meeting.
Thank you for that. I mean, what I'm picking up, and I'm trying to capture this in a way that we can then take forward as a committee, is there is a concern that the forward plan as currently set out, it's fine, except we think there are gaps in it, and there are areas which we feel should be part of the forward plan, and they relate partly to the carryover point that Councillor Cox raised, partly to the issues that Councillor Allnutt raises about LGR and how that is going to impact. So we can. So I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Cox. So if we can capture that in a sensible form, we can then feed that back as a committee, if that's the committee's wish. I'll come to that in a moment. Does that make sense? Well, I'll just try to summarise that. Yeah. The Councillor Cox, you.
Yeah, I think so. From the carryovers that I've looked at, there's going to be 4 key areas I think that will fit under the headings within the forward plan. And for me, it's about scrutiny, reviewing the decisions made by Cabinet if they choose to look at the carryovers and it compromises these areas of work because of LGR, which is the potential proposal that they're not going to proceed with certain things. So they will come under grounds maintenance, obviously the provisional year-end budget, LGR and how it will be funded, because there's talk of cancelling certain streams of work and the money being moved to LGR funding because it has to be funded somehow, and the asset disposal programme. That's my understanding from today. So it will be as a result of whatever the decisions Cabinet make at the end of the month, but a number of those decisions are over 50,000, so I would expect them to potentially come to us for consideration. That's all.
Well, 2 things. I've just been informed, in the normal whisper in the ear fashion at meetings, that Cabinet approved the carry forwards last night. That's actually being addressed, but it's not here because it was last night. The other point I want to add, and I think it's kind of it's one of those catch-22s here. The forward plan lists the planned forthcoming decisions that are to be made by the executive, and that's why it's listed here, so we can see what the intentions are. Some of the areas you've just listed, Councillor Cox, undoubtedly are going to be impacted by LGR and other factors, which the Cabinet will then have to change its forward plan in terms of the decisions it's going to have to make. Does that make sense? Therefore, in a sense, we're anticipating the potential that some of these areas are going to be affected. That doesn't make the forward plan that's in front of us tonight wrong, but it does make us feel that there is inevitably going to be change. Well, we know there's going to be changes because that's a part and parcel, not just with the current administration, but over a period of time, it's been acknowledged that LGR is going to lead to some hard decisions being made going forward. So I think we can capture all that and feed back. It doesn't make it doesn't. It's not part of commenting on the current forward plan, which is not wrong until they change it. If that makes sense. Yeah. Councillor Glancy and then Councillor Allnutt.
Thank you. Does this not come under the one-off corporate plan refresh, which is scrutiny work programme? I know we did that in June, but yeah. Is this not on part of that?
I mean, I think that
'Cause we, yeah.
my feeling is we're going to be. Where did it? Where I'll get rid of this. I can't. Excuse me. I can't see the button. We're going to, when we come to the corporate plan refresh, and it's in our work programme to input before the final cabinet decision is taken on that. These are areas that undoubtedly are going to be covered. I don't think that rules out, you know, if the feeling tonight at the meeting is that we want to flag up that these are particular areas that we think we want to have an understanding of where the cabinet's going, doesn't stop us doing that. Sorry, Councillor on that.
It was 2 points really. I'm picking up on what Adam said. This forward plan is about key decisions that cabinet make. Now, Adam was saying, well, some of the decisions will be council, so they won't figure in this plan. Now, I think apropos LGR, I don't think members are clear yet on which decisions will have to come to council and which decisions necessarily will have to be cabinet, because there are different things to do. And I think at some point we need a matrix, perhaps on Monday, so that we're all aware of who's deciding what when. I think that's important, and so that members, in accordance with statements I've made and the new leader has made, should be fully across what is happening. And the second thing was that I attended cabinet last night, and I listened to the discussions about rollover of monies. Now I don't, if I apologise again if I've misheard it, but I understand it was the routine rollover of monies unspent. It wasn't a decision to vary anything at that meeting last night, as I understand it. So if that is the case, then that's fine, because the decisions to vary anything will come subsequently. But if I am mistaken and there was a decision to vary something last night and it exceeded the 50k, then I think we should be made aware of it quickly so we can take a view on it as to whether we call it in or not.
Show.
So just to clarify the process, it was our usual end of year process. The report that was considered was the general fund outturn report. That was largely a noting report. However, there were two decisions taken. One was the revenue carry forwards for general and special expenses, and one was the capital carry forwards. The process is as it has always been. So officers are asked to confirm whether or not monies are required to be carried forward, the reasons for those carry forwards, and they are put forward to the cabinet for approval. That is the usual process that was followed last night, and those carry forwards were approved. So that, as a decision that has been taken by the cabinet, is eligible for calling, and obviously that is something the committee has within their gift. It was not a decision to reprioritise in line with the refreshed corporate plan, as Councillor Glancy has pointed out. That work is to follow later in the year, following the prioritisation exercise that has been outlined, and that is already on your work programme. So hopefully that confirms. Thank you.
I mean, I think we are in a strange situation that we know that, you know, a lot of these areas are going to be impacted very significantly, but we don't know how, and we don't know what direction the executive is proposing to take. And I think our role as scrutiny, where necessary, is to question the executive around its actions, decisions, and intentions, for that matter. And at the moment, it's business as usual until it's not, and it may not be after Monday. You know, we don't know what's going to come up, but I suspect it's going to be a bit further down the road. But we can, forgive me, Councillor, on that, but we can capture out this discussion as being an expression of concern in advance, that these are particular areas that scrutiny, you know, providing the committee agree, and I'm going to ask the committee to agree this, not just, you know, because it's not for us, for individuals of us to say we want such and such taken up. So I will put it to the committee when we get to the end of our discussion. But these are the areas that our discussion has suggested we have particular concerns about. So cabinet is advised of what we're looking at. If that, you know, that makes sense. Councillor Clancy.
Just to come back on that, yes, I think the level of carry forward is quite sort of alarming. but it means that we've allocated money, but we haven't had the resources to fulfil that requirement. So we're carrying them forward another year. Now we're going to have a lot more work to do with the sort of fewer people. So in reality, will those jobs ever get done? I think we need to note from scrutiny that our expectation is that we've carried it forward for a particular reason. Please put every effort into getting them done, because otherwise there's no point in carrying them forward, is there?
Yep. That point is well made. Are there any other comments people want to make about this? So what I'm going to say, and I'm reading my scribble here, is that members have raised concerns about the absence at the moment in the forward plan, whilst understanding that these are decisions yet to be formulated and proposed, relating to the impact of LGR, that there's concerns about the carry forwards, carryovers, whichever term we use, actually being used for the purpose for which they were set, and recognising, and I take the particular point that these are largely to do with areas that were agreed for action, but the resources to carry through the action weren't then available. And what reassurance there can be that that will continue. And then thirdly, just the general issue about, you know, that we're alive to the fact that this forward plan may well be subject to significant modification as a result of the LGR process. And that's something that will be coming back to this committee in due course in any case. Is that a fair summation of points being made? Are the committee, and I'm going to ask for a show, are the committee happy for that feedback to go to Cabinet on that basis? Those in favour? Well, that's everybody. Okay, thank you. Right, I will now very quickly move on from the forward plan before someone thinks of something else to raise. But I think we've covered it very well. Item 6 is review of the scrutiny work programme. Now, all I'm going to say on this item is that, you know, when we dealt with this at the last meeting, we quite rightly reflected that it was likely that this could change, but I don't have any proposals for change here tonight. But I'm certain that in the light of everything we've been touching on, it is likely that it will change. Councillor Thwaites.
Yeah, it's just a quick point. There was 2 items that we added back into the list that were originally on the list, but for some reason, for whatever reason, fell off. And one of them was the older person's housing review. I'm not asking for an answer now, but currently there's no date against it. So it's just if we can actually have some sort of indication of date on that one in particular, because I know it's already got a life of its own, so it's already being transacted. So trying to get some sort of date on that.
There is actually one other item I've just remembered. Yeah, so we need to get dates actually set for those. And I'm turning to Adam to remind me, we were looking at setting up a workshop in August on the HRA business plan. And I was asked to look at dates in the week commencing the 13th of August. Now, I have to say, I will say, I'm not going to elaborate why I'm not available during that time. But I did think before, and I said, let's have a think about it. I thought I'd actually ask the committee, because I know August is a difficult time for people in terms of holidays, absences, summer childcare responsibilities for grandparents, etc. So the choice is to look at that week of 13th of August, or to look at a later date, probably in September for that workshop. I don't know. Again, can I do it quickly by show of hands? You know, those who would prefer it later. Are the other people who aren't putting their hands up saying they're available in August? Okay, we'll look at August then. Yeah. Okay, thank you. That was the only other comment I had on the work plan. I'm sure when we next meet formally as a committee, we will be looking at changes. Yeah. Okay. on to item 7, which is the substantive agenda item for tonight, which is to look at the draft. And just to emphasise, the document we've got tonight is the report, and the document attached is a draft. So this is an opportunity of scrutiny to be at the beginning of a process of formulating policy. So the report is going to be introduced by, I'm going to have to look your name up again, Ryan Ebdale, because I can't read the name tag from this distance, unfortunately. I need new specs. So Ryan Ebdale is going to introduce the report, but I think Michelle is also going to say a few words in the lead up. So is Ryan going first or Michelle going first? Michelle, I'll lead off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the social value, members, you will have heard us talk about this in relation to various contracts that we hold in the council, and put simply, it refers to that wider financial, non-financial benefit we can get for our communities, environment, and that general well-being of our places from the public sector contracts that we commission and that we hold. So this is about the things that we work with our contractors to achieve over and above normal contract delivery at no extra cost to the council. The council has a number of contracts in place, and Ryan will come on to some of those key contracts in a few minutes. And we do already have social value supporting our communities, and there are some really great outcomes being achieved. But the reflection really is that because we don't have a specific policy or framework in place, that isn't done in a coordinated way, and we don't currently track social value outcomes or report on those outcomes to show the benefit for our communities or ensure that the social value opportunities are targeted in a way to particularly address or support the priorities that we have as a council. So in response to that, a social value framework has been drafted. It is at the early policy development stage, as the chair said, and your feedback would directly inform its continued development and refinement. So we're asking you to consider that this evening, but a couple of things I wanted to draw your attention to. One is that this links directly to, but goes beyond our procurement activities. So we have a procurement approach in place, which is well established, and social value features as one of our expectations when we do procure contracts, and contractors do make a number of commitments to them, and they form part of contract discussions. In 2024, our procurement colleagues carried out an appraisal of our, what they would call our maturity around how well we embed social value as part of our service delivery. And as you will see at paragraph 4.4, there are a number of stages to that. So a minimum compliant level, developing, so compliance, but perhaps not having that as embedded as well as it could be, moving into mature, leader, and then innovator. And at that innovator level, you would expect it to be a core metric, so integrated into all that we do with regular reporting against targets. The 2024 procurement appraisal confirmed that, and to get towards that level, we need to have a framework or a policy in place, and that is what the piece of work tonight seeks to do and to address. So our hope and intention is to use the framework so that we can then coordinate that activity across the council. Ryan, as our lead officer, would coordinate that work and would make sure that we were maximising value, that we were communicating that effectively, because we do feel sometimes that the work that is done goes a bit under the radar, and there's some really great outcomes being achieved, but then that we report annually on the outcomes that are achieved as well, to give you confidence that social value is being embedded and is genuinely making a difference for our communities. The other reason we think this is important now, go back to the LGR discussion, during the life of the majority of these contracts, we're going to have a change of council, and it will help us to ensure that outcomes that are set out and achieved and the priorities for our communities are carried through with those contracts as the new unitary council takes place. So we really welcome all of your feedback this evening. The portfolio holder is here this evening as well. You will find 2 documents in front of you that were tabled this evening. The first one, Ryan will talk through in a moment, just to give you an idea of some of the contracts we've got across the breadth of the council, and some of those examples that Ryan wanted to highlight around things that have been done before, just to bring that to life a little bit. The other document in front of you is just a prompt document, really just to support discussion if it's helpful. So some of the key feedback we would find really helpful is whether or not we're focused on the right outcomes. Is the approach that we're proposing proportionate? How will we and you know it's working? Are the delivery arrangements arrangements, the accountability arrangements that we're proposing, proportionate? Are they going to be effective? Does this approach help us to move beyond just adding social value as a commitment in contracts to really bringing it to life? What can we learn from what we've done so far or what we haven't done so far? And also, does it leave us in a stronger position in relation to LGR? And one of the things that you've agreed as a committee is each time the chair feeds back on a work programme item to the cabinet, he will highlight any particular LGR reflections for the cabinet's attention. So Ryan, if I could just ask you to talk through the other documents, and then we'll open up for members. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, evening everyone. So as Michelle alluded to, we social value is embedded in all of the contracts that we currently hold. That I've got a list here of some of those contractors. I haven't got, it's not an exhaustive list. We'll put that together down the line. But essentially, all of these contracts contain an element of social value. Now, what we don't do is work proactively at times to ensure that we're maximising that element. So it's very ad hoc at this moment in time. We utilise it when items come up. It's a bit of an afterthought almost, in terms of you look at other avenues and then you think actually social value could be really useful in this. There are some examples again on the next page which I'll go through where it's been really impactful, but once again we don't really shout about that. So it'd be really good to have a kind of comms plan around that and be able to kind of not just report on it, but show people how we've utilised the social value within those contracts and really bring it to life, get testimonials and that kind of thing, and real-time examples, so that we can sort of measure and quantify the social and the economic impact of social value. So that's the idea. I'll just sort of run through some of the examples of where social value has been utilised, but you'll see on the second page from the dates, it's kind of once or twice a year from different contractors, but Axis were quite were active with that social value for the last few years. So we received a community grant application from Age UK for some repair works that were required at Gloucester House. That was taken to the panel, and unfortunately, we didn't have the funding. There were some other applications that came in that were perhaps stronger, but we also had that discussion in the room around whether or not Axis could utilise some of their skills, some of the workmen who could do some of that work. Relatively straightforward for them, but they have the skills and they have the expertise to do that. So that's what we did. So we utilised that, and obviously we all know that what an excellent facility Gloucester House is in the town, how well used it is. So that was really beneficial to Rhonda and the people who attend Gloucester House. I won't run through all of them, but essentially what we've got small amounts of money that have been donated to certain activities or to start up particular groups in different areas. We try to focus those again in rural areas or the courtyard at Springfield Centre. That was something that came up, Siggy, which you'll remember. We utilised social value then, and that was again one of the first times we've really used it, because I was like, I don't really have any funding, but what can we do to be creative? So that's an example of where we've kind of thought outside the box. But what this framework will allow us to do is to be much more proactive with that and hold those contractors accountable and be accountable ourselves as well to that. It's it can be viewed at times as a bit of a tick box exercise within that procurement process, that we'll say that we'll do that social value, but if we don't ask them to put their money where their mouth is or their expertise, utilize their expertise, then we can't benefit from that and take advantage of that. But it's also very important to be able to measure that and report on that and show the kind of good work that's being done and that kind of collaborative working with our contractors. So yeah, that's essentially the idea. That framework is, as Michelle said, it's a draft. It's I've researched best practice, looked at other examples of how other authorities and other organisations utilise social value, looked at sort of national guidance and things like that, and tried to sort of cherry pick the best bits and put that together. But again, it's a discussion this evening around whether we're hitting the mark, whether it's proportionate, and I really welcome your views and input into that so that we can sort of fine tune it.
Thanks, Ryan. Just before Ryan finishes, I just wanted to pick up, sorry, one more point that that we didn't include in there, which I should have done, which is that often our contractors will commit to things like local employment, supporting apprentices, attending careers events, that kind of thing. Those things do happen, but what we don't have at the minute is an ability to track that and report that back to you. So there's an awful lot goes into that. They make a lot of commitments, and we just really want to pull that together. But we forgot to pop that one on the list there. But sorry, Mike, I'll hand to you.
My wife would say, any opportunity to shut me up is welcome. Okay, thank you very much for that introduction to the report. I'm going to ignore the comments to my right. I'll open it to the floor. Councillor Thwaites and then Councillor Chubb.
Thanks. I'd follow on from what Michelle's just actually said, because it was one of my key thoughts around this. Fantastic concept. I think it's wonderful. But how do we enforce it? Because, I mean, assuming some of the contractors may win the contract because of the social commitment they make. So how do we actually track that and make sure that actually happens, that we get that benefit? How would that actually work?
What I would like to do is put together a kind of working group so that we can ensure that those contract managers are on top, so that maybe be quarterly, so that I can then ask that question, what's happening here? And so then obviously at the end of the year that we'll be reporting on that. So if we have those quarterly kind of groups and those meetings to ensure that I think it's about actually just putting it at the forefront of people's minds, that there is that social value element. Are we asking those questions? Are we sort of staying on top of it? But again, welcome any additional views on how we might do that.
The other thing to note is that these are contractual commitments. So as part of a tender, bidders will say, we will do X. So I'm thinking of one of the recent housing contracts, for example, they've committed to X number of hours of, supporting apprentices and various other things. And so they then form part of contract meetings, but they don't go into very specific activities. So what this work will do via Ryan is pin that down. So you've said you will do that. What does it look like in practice? And then manage it through those contract meetings. And by giving corporate visibility to it, that will allow us to better hold contractors to account. And we do it really well in our leisure contract, but we don't always do it as well in all of our contracts.
Can I just develop that point before I come to Councillor Cho? And I've written down 3 words here, which is promises, promises, promises. In our dealings with contractors, developers, various organisations, they are very good at telling us how wonderful they're going to be, and then things unravel a little bit further down the road. So I hear what you're saying about setting up a group to keep their nose to it, and I think that's good. But the bottom line is, what are we prepared to do as a council if, despite that, they still fail to deliver on what they've promised, what they've contractually entered into? Where is the bite? Because if we don't have bite back, ultimately, it's just talk, isn't it? So I don't know if you can comment on that.
So this is the contract management approach. This would go into those contract meetings. Those commitments are really clear and explicit, and we can manage it through those. We have escalation routes within our contracts. With the if there's ambiguity about our expectation, that makes it much harder to manage contracts. It doesn't matter if it's social value or any other expectations. So what the group does is give that visibility and that corporate coordination. Ryan will then need to ensure that our contract managers, because they're across the organisation, are managing those contracts robustly and utilising the usual processes for escalation and action. So at the moment, I can't be certain that those conversations are happening routinely in every contract meeting, but as a minimum expectation that will be happening with the schedule of what's been agreed, and then the ability to report on that. The offer back to our contractors will be really clearly that we want to celebrate the things that are done, because that was the other thing Ryan and I picked up when preparing for this meeting this evening, is that where things are being done, we perhaps aren't sharing those. And I think it'd be interesting, having looked at a list, how many of those you knew as members, for example. So that's the offer back to our contractors. So it's a partnership.
The Chubb was first, then Councillor Atherton, Councillor Glancy.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Ryan, for all your work on this. And I think it's really helpful to have this framework. And I noticed it is going to be what you're recommending is a much more flexible structure as well to adapt. So in terms of adding value, I think it's really important. So it's fantastic. Just two questions I've got. You mentioned that it's no cost to Melton borough council itself, but would this add costs for a bidder, a contractor, and therefore would it eventually come back to Melton Borough Council, that additional cost? The second question I've got is, just want to be clear, is it for reporting and the education internally? And I get that in terms of the comms plan, really helpful. Or is it actually determining selection? And if so, what level of weighting are you putting to that kind of selection process when you kind of make those decisions? So those are kind of two areas that I was just interested to hear a little bit more about.
If you're happy for me to come in. So Ryan is working on the post procurement and decision. How do we bring it to life? Part of this. So social value forms part of our procurement arrangements anyway. I would need my procurement colleagues to give you the specific detail around how we ensure that that is done in a way that doesn't bring additional costs further down the line into a particular contract. And I'm very happy to take that away to give you that specific. What we do within our procurement evaluations is also always have an element of obviously the cost evaluation, but also the quality evaluation and the social value relating to a contract forms part of that. I think if I can give you a key example, within our leisure contract, we built a social value expectation into that, in that without increasing the costs that are being put to us around the proposed contract, there would be a series of outreach activity, and that would be built in as additionality. That has been built in. That is not attributing extra costs, but what it is doing is increasing the reach of our leisure provider, and we report on that through our leisure contract meetings. But in terms of that specific technical detail around the procurement, evaluation and assurance around no further costs coming back to the council, if you're happy, I can take that away and make sure the response comes back to the committee.
Thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Atherton.
Thank you, Chair. Ryan and myself were very much with the Springfield one, and I have to say the social value that came out of that work that was done at Springfield has been fantastic. The Springfield Centre is probably one of the best centres used. They have a vegetable garden growing. The centre is used for music evenings. They have games evening. They have coffee mornings. They have lots of social groups going on. So that work that was done when it was done for Springfield, when I first got into Springfield, it was actually quite dry at the yard. It needed a lot. Both Ryan and myself worked with the person that was really interested to bring Springfield Centre alive and make it usable. And I have to say that it's been probably the best social value we had out of Springfield ever. So it's one centre that is absolutely used a lot by the community.
Can I just ask a question? Because I'm looking at the list and it says £250. We seem to have got an awful lot for £250.
So the £250 was for the yard, which was a small yard. What I wanted there was raised beds, so they could plant for the elderly, so they didn't have to bend over and things like that. They wanted to plant their own vegetables, have a bench in the seating area. The person that was really keen is a builder, and the people, the community actually helped. They put a lot of time and effort in to make that centre something that they wanted. So it wasn't just that the Access did supply the material, but the whole community was involved, making it a really good social base to meet.
So, I mean, it sounds absolutely grand, but so it was a broader effort than just Axis contributing an amount of money.
But we needed that money to start it.
Oh yeah. I'm not critical, but I think it's making the link that sometimes it's a catalyst rather than the whole picture. That's what I was trying to draw out.
Absolutely, yes.
So by doing this, it encouraged a wider activity within the community.
Yeah.
Did you want to add to that, Ryan?
I think you've just hit the nail on the head, to be honest. I was just going to reflect on that point, because actually it doesn't have to be a huge amount of money, or it does, even the Gloucester House example, it was a day's work for those people who've got those skills and expertise, but the people who attend there and the people who work there weren't able to do it. £250 gone an awful long way, but it's actually not about the money. It's about what that money allowed you to then do and then brought people together. and that's the sort of power of the social value. But we haven't, again, we haven't shouted about that. We haven't, given that example. So it's lovely to hear that, and I'm really pleased.
But come back of it, it encouraged the people that live there to bring own plants and own the vegetables they were growing and bringing them into the centre to make it grow and use and share it, which I think is as much as important as anything. So everything they were growing wasn't for one person, it was shared within the community, which I think is a very positive thing.
So Glancy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think Michelle may recall that I was always very, very keen on this. It's one of the things that we wanted to do. So I'm really, really pleased to see this before us. But I do think we do need to sing the praises of the people and the companies that are providing this social value, because that then shows that we actually appreciate it. And the man on the street doesn't know how this has come about, but it's by good negotiation. And it's by working with our partners, which are all the different contractors. So I do think we need to sing the praises of the contractors who are providing that, because that's a very good advertisement for them as well. So, that's, well, I dare say the cost of the work would be included in their sort of their costs for the service. I totally agree with that. There'd be somewhere within there, but we're actually having a huge benefit from it. So I do think we need to shout that out and not just keep it quiet, because I didn't know half of these were taking place. Although I had a sort of an interest in various things, but I knew about BIFA and things, but not the whole picture. And I mean, I'm within this chamber, so people outside haven't got a clue.
I do find myself wondering if a contractor company is enthusiastic about being engaged in this sort of activity, it's probably also going to be a better deliverer of services and more empathetic to the needs of the community they're providing those services to. So there's a win-win potentially in that, isn't there? Councillor Cox.
Yeah, I do speak with my charity head on now, so bear with me because I've picked up a few points. Faith, it's really good to see faith in there. For many faith organisations, especially across our borough, it's not just a place of worship, it's that social provision that they offer. We've got really strong that. They are also really limited what they can bid for in terms of grants. Because many grant givers often say if there's faith involved, you can't bid for them. So it's really good to see that in this proposal. How to prioritise between different groups. So it's one of the things many grant givers have to consider, and you will be having to decide between different groups as to who gets things. So one of the things an organisation like Leicestershire and Rutland Community Foundation do is have a conversation with all the groups across the borough or whatever locality, ask them what sort of things would benefit them, and then look at their levels of income. And instead of us all applying, as a manager of a charity, I don't apply for all of their grants. They tend to contact me and say, we've got somebody who wants to work with children. So, and they know that would be more pertinent to my area of work. I just think otherwise, how we're going to decide between all these really worthwhile organisations across our borough. But if you actually understand, for MenCap, it might be somebody who helps them with the garden or paints a fence. For me, it might be something different. And then you might look at the income for Mountain Learning Hub and go, you can afford that yourself. But, MadMac might not, or whatever. So it's just how you balance all that. And then the last point is, how can we feature in this the real big hitters, which are not necessarily just our contracts, but I just wonder if it's worth mentioning in this somewhere, which is the planning. It's the planning ones. So organisations like Barrett's, as a charity, we had huge donation from them when they were building houses locally as part of their social work that they had to do. But that was just because one of the guys who worked for me happened to meet this guy down the gym. And so we ended up getting that. It'd be brilliant if that was more organised and structured and fair. But, if we've got the priorities for our borough, which you are clearly identifying, perhaps the Melton Learning Hub might not have been the priority for that. I mean, we're very grateful for it and it was brilliant, but there might be a smaller organisation who's really struggling financially that would have really benefited from that. So I know it's largely dictated by LCC, but Ryan, we had the experience with the people doing the road, didn't we? And they helped the Bowls Club, which was brilliant and ideal because they helped them with the outdoor garden. But that wasn't organised by anyone in that sense. And they're the ones that have got the big amounts of money because these are huge contracts and really big businesses. So it's just how we feature them. Thank you.
Councillor Thwaites.
Yeah, I just want to develop that along a bit further as well, because the way I was thinking about is sort of two connected ideas here. One is that I feel we should actually present something to the suppliers as well and what our expectations are, and not a shopping list or as such, but sort of saying if it's a £200,000 contract, we would expect something like, say, 50 hours worth of community work or whatever it is. And I don't know what that would be, but I think the final paper would benefit from saying these are the suggested type of amounts or contributions or ideas that you could put forward, and then it sort of develops the idea that Councillor Cox was just saying, that going to the local organisation saying what sort of things do you need to do doesn't mean they're going to get done, but if a contractor comes along and this is one of the examples that they think that's great. So for example, I need a path doing outside main cap if anybody's interested. But I mean, just as an example, those are the sort of things that we could actually suggest to suppliers to actually do it proactively. And so developing that further forward is going to the schools and the different colleges and saying, what are the opportunities your students are looking for? Councillor Cox especially, so for apprenticeships and that sort of thing, and especially when we're looking at other contracts, which are things like St Gawain, that aren't necessarily within borough council contracts. And so I agree with Councillor Cox, which this is, but it's also worthy of looking at its connections to other areas as well.
Just to avoid any conflict with declarations of interest, we need to point out other charities may need paths doing as well. Just so we're in the clear on that one. Councillor Atherton.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to come back to Councillor Thwaites' thing about schools, just to remind everybody that we are actively working towards youth engagement or on a youth engagement policy at the moment. That's being done cross-party. Indeed, Councillor Cliff is part of that group with members, and that was an action set up by this committee over a year ago. So there's an opportunity already. We're talking to schools about not just how we can help them, but how they can help us. What do the kids want? What do they need? Not just schools, but other youth organisations too. So that's already in train.
Michelle.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back to something you said, Councillor Thwaites, about giving suppliers more clarity on what's needed or what matters and what's important. Just a reflection on something we've done recently. Obviously, we're mobilising a number of new housing contracts at the moment, and the team had arranged meet the contractor events. First time that we'd done that, obviously in a long time, having just re-procured those contracts, and it was brilliant to have them in the room, able to share expectations across the board around, how these contracts need to work, what the customer journey needs to look and feel like, but also some of the things that are needed in our communities. And at the end of that session, contractors were coming over saying, "Oh, I heard you mention that. We'd really like to support with that. We'd really like to get involved with that." A number of examples that Ryan is following up on at the moment. We didn't put them in here because they're not over the line, and we didn't want to put them in until they were. But we have agreed that we will bring our housing contractors back together every year and reflect on, okay, so how has this gone? But actually, what difference have we made together as a partnership in our community? And it was something I saw when I did an LGA peer review a couple of years ago in a council in Essex, where they had IT providers, gas servicing providers, repairs contractors, all working together that were hosting events in the community and various things, and they were really maximising that with their contracts. But the contractors felt part of the team and they knew what the council expected of them. So I think that supplier awareness point's really key, and we hope that this framework will allow us to have much more meaningful conversations rather than the opportunistic conversations that that we know happen at the moment.
Councillor Allnut, then Councillor Chill.
Thank you, Chair. This paper is about social value from contracts that this council has with suppliers of different services or things. So just a word of caution, we can't, in the context of planning, do that because that would be contrary to law. We can't say you can have this planning application through if you give us 300 for so and so. That's just not allowed. And it is out with other dialogues we have with Sankabang and other people, and that's a different sort of process. This is purely contractors. Now, one question I have is this. This is a good policy relating to contracts that we've said will run beyond LGR. And as I understand the legal framework, the contracts remain in place with the successor authority. That's the legal thing, unless there is a break clause within the contract. So all these contracts will run on unless something else intervenes. So it begs a question whether or not we are aware here how many of our brothers and sisters across the other 8 councils have these type of policy, this policy. Now, if they've got this type of policy in place, that gives us an immediate hook within the framework of discussions about LGR to say, well, we've got this policy in place. What's yours like? And we should be thinking about how they're going to be improved or changed in a year's time or the year after that. But you can amplify that dozens of times, which is what Councillor Pat Cumbers and I started it before Christmas, which was to analyse all of the policies that we have, which are several hundred, and we're not going to change it. We're not going to, and some of those were due for renewal this year, and some of them were due for renewal last year but weren't done. So there's a finite ability to look at those, and some difficult decisions are going to have to be made about which ones we do and which ones we don't do. This is one of the ones which I think we should do, if you see what I mean. I just say that en passant.
That's very helpful, and I'm going to just pick up on the point about planning and developers before council. On behalf of council, I don't think it was being suggested that in any process that involves planning applications, we should be tying them into this policy. I think it was a wider issue about where we've got large companies, large developers in the borough. It's certainly worth encouraging them to voluntarily look at whether they can contribute towards the local community in the way it's been stated. So, but I think the point you make is well understood. We can't actually make it a requirement of a planning application if they want to put up a factory or build 1,000 houses. Councillor Chubb.
Thank you, Chair. Just to really build upon the points that Councillor Cox and Councillor Thwaites and Michelle has mentioned, that many of these companies, particularly the larger ones, will have ESG policies. And so actually it's really quite helpful to have clarity in terms of what is being asked of them, and they themselves can actually benefit internally from contributing and do something, so they can report back on that. So it just helps in terms of communicating really effectively, and I speak from experience on that side. So just want to make that point.
Not seeing any other hands up. I've got a few points. I'm quite impressed with myself. I discovered how to put highlighted notes on the paper when I was going through it. So I've actually got something proper written down. So I've got a number of questions or observations that I just want to make. And this is in the section 5 on priority social value outcomes for Melton. And there's a reference there to ethical and resilient supply chains. And my question was, how will this be evidenced? It seemed to me, I mean, those are fine words that are set out there. That's what we should be expecting. But how do we actually evidence that that is in fact the case? So that's one question. I'll go through them all and you can come back rather than doing one at a time. Likewise, further down under measurement and evidence, in relation to financial evidence, it talks about calculated social value using agreed proxy values where suitable and transparent. It wasn't very transparent to me what that meant. So it's really just the question of how do we calculate that? Can we have an example of the way in which that would be calculated? I think examples are often helpful on these sort of things so we can understand better the process. And under governance, I'm just noticing we're talking about a social value delivery group involving procurement, contract managers, etc., etc., etc. And then further down, it does refer to producing an annual social value report. What I wasn't seeing in this, and forgive me if I've missed it, is where member involvement comes in. There's reference to officers, there's reference to a report, but where and when and with what frequency would members have an opportunity to oversee and scrutinise this area of activity? And that was it. Only 3. I've done quite well.
Okay, Ryan, are you happy if I respond? But please add if there's anything I missed. So that your point on language is really well made, and there's definitely a plain English test that we can apply if we do this. In terms of the ethical and resilient supply chains, I think the example measures have set out to give some examples to try and help with that. So, for example, the local subcontracting, and but it's something we definitely need to clarify and make sure there's no ambiguity in here. So we'll definitely take that away. Similarly with the evidence. So one of the things that's referred to in the text above is a particular tool that is used to calculate social value. But I think, Ryan, we can do some more work around explaining what does that actually look like, and it might be worth drawing on the leisure contract as an example. So our leisure providers provide us every year with examples of what's been done and how they've calculated the monetary impact of that. So we can do a bit more work on that, Ryan, that would be helpful. And in terms of the annual report, really pleased you've raised it. That's one of the questions I would ask you as an officer is it something that you would want to see here on an annual basis that you can then feed back to Cabinet on in terms of the effectiveness of our implementation of this policy? We'd really welcome that. Our expectation in creating an annual report is it is available to members for governance, for oversight, for scrutiny. So if that's something that you wish to bring forward, really welcome that as part of the feedback.
For Holmes.
Thank you, Chairman. I look at this, I look at it all, and I can see this young man works very hard at it. But in 18 months, what's going to happen? I just feel there's a lot of work going on here, but where are we going to be? And we don't know, do we? I know it sounds awfully negative, but you know, we're doing the work and it's very good. Whatever, but I just worry that what we want to aspire to, we're not going to be able to carry it through sometimes. I mean, I don't know what everybody else thinks about this, but it's just very worrying to me.
I'll take Councillor Gordon and then we'll perhaps pick up on that.
Yes, following on from that, I'm assuming that other councils, especially the 10 councils to do with the LGR and that, are all on board with this so that we can go into it knowing that everybody's on the same page.
I mean, I think that was, sorry, Councillor Close, I'll come to you in a second. I think that was touched upon by Councillor Allnott earlier, and was noted as an action point that to have that dialogue with the other councillors, see where they are in this process. I mean, I'm bound to say, I'm the world's best pessimist at times, but I think, as in all the work of the council, we've got to assume we've still got to strive to do the best and to achieve the best for our residents and our communities, and that's what this is about. Where will we all be in 18 months' time? We might not all be on the planet. Who knows? But I don't think we stop this work because of that. Although there are areas which clearly are going to get pinched by the processes that are coming upon us now with LGR. But I think we've got to be a bit optimistic and say that if this is the right thing to do, we should be pushing forward with it and working with our new partners to encourage that. And I'm sure many of them will, if they've not got exactly what we've got, I'm sure they'll have something similar or be developing similar thinking. Because it's all about pulling in to our communities the sort of activity that Councillor Atherton referred to at Springfield. And I think the more of that we can do, the better. So let's be optimistic. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add assurance from an officer perspective. So extracting social value from our contracts is not dependent on any LGR outcome. It's part of our business as usual. What we're saying is we've got an opportunity to do it better and to strengthen that. And one of the things that I know Ryan is particularly keen to do, not just on this, but on a number of our community-facing work streams, is look at that harmonisation with the other councils, particularly now we know who will be aligning with. And exactly as Councillor Rowland said, these contracts don't stop on the 1st of April 2028. They carry on, and to have something that's established and a process that's established for, with our contractors around what is social value, what do we need, and how do we report on it, that carries through. But any opportunity to align in advance, we will absolutely do. The other thing that is really important that Ryan will be working on is looking at what other areas of synergy there are. So something I know that Ryan and portfolio holder have been discussing, for example, is the Armed Forces Covenant, something we know all councillors are committed to. And I don't know, Councillor Atherton, if you wanted to say a few words. I know you're keen for us to sort of feature that within this as well.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. As a gold member or a gold certificate holder of the Armed Forces Covenant, not only do we have an obligation to do our best for the armed forces, things like guaranteed interviews to forces leavers if they apply for a job, we're obliged under the Armed Forces Covenant to spread the word. And we have an opportunity to engage with contractors, current and future, to encourage them to sign up to the Armed Forces Covenant too. And that has immediate benefit, not just for those leaving today, but those leaving tomorrow and their families, and therefore to the wider community.
I think that's a point very well made. And then on a broader basis, I think what we forget sometimes, we're a big business, and we're moving in to be part of an even bigger business, and people want to do business with us. So if we set the right tone in how we see the right way for them to do business with, and the right way for them to be part of, have an active role in our communities, they will respond to that, because they want to have the business with the public sector, with local authorities and other public bodies. And in the same way, when you talk about the Armed Forces Covenant, if we make it clear we have a standard that we apply, they will want to be on board with that, because they want to do business without doing anything improper in terms of contracting. As long as we set that tone, we'll actually achieve results. I'm confident of it. So personally, you can tell I've got a certain degree of enthusiasm for this report and for the direction of travel, and I get the sense other committee members do as well. Are there any? Oh, Councillor Grancy.
Just coming back to the fact that this is about communications and promotions, isn't it? This is what we really need to concentrate on, because the Armed Forces Covenant is extremely important. And we went through that how many years ago? 3 years? 4, must be 3 years now. And we have the gold standard shared with other authorities. So I just think it's important that we keep plugging away at that. And communication is the key to most things.
Just come back on a couple of points, and I just wanted to thank Councillor Holmes for referring to me as a young man. I really appreciate that. That went a really long way. My ego is really, honestly, No, but just going back to the point, sorry, I couldn't pass up that opportunity. So, but just going back to the points you've made around talking with district colleagues, that, as Michelle's alluded to, we're doing that already with lots of these different things. And there's an element of, from my perspective, when talking with colleagues, and we've worked together on different things in the past anyway, but there's an element of if we've got a very good social value framework or ACB policy or whatever it is, there's no reason why we can't lead on those things. And actually that's a really good thing going into that partnership, that we have officers with expertise and skills that can then lead on those things. And as Michelle said, it is part of that business as usual. We've got, our residents deserve the best that we can possibly draw out of these contracts. And so to have this framework in place, I think is going to be really beneficial regardless going forward. I just think it's an opportunity potentially to put that positive spin on it for us to be leading on it at this stage. So I just wanted to touch on that point.
For all that.
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to say, I think if we're concluding the discussion and moving to an end, if we are, even if we're not, I just want to record, I think we really should record the committee's thanks to Ryan for his efforts. And I hope he's got a very good pension, because he's not as young as I thought he was. No, but seriously, there's a bit, and it follows on from the very good work he did with the parishes in another area of activity relating to helping people, so, and community activity. So it's a good piece of work all round that's been going on, and I'd like that recorded. Thank you.
I would agree with that, whether we're coming to an end or we're not coming to an end, I'll be the judge of that. Are there any other issues people want to raise with regards to the report? Quite a productive discussion around it. Okay, well, I'd like to thank Ryan and Michelle and all those involved in this, and the portfolio holder, this is an aside, and to the committee. I certainly get quite enthusiastic about these sorts of initiatives, because we forget sometimes we deal with a lot of very dry business as a council, don't we? That ultimately it's about how we can enhance the lives of our communities and our residents. And I think this is an important part of that process. So thank you all. And I normally say at this point, there is no any other business. I'm leaving the door open because from the briefing we had, whether you want to raise an item of any other business, Michelle.
Just really briefly then.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll have one item of other business.
So I won't keep you, and you've all had the communication, but given that the LGR decision has been communicated on the day that we had the meeting, I thought it would be helpful just to confirm that that decision has been taken. It has been communicated publicly, and an email has been shared, well, a number of emails today with all members. There is a member briefing scheduled for Monday evening that will take place in here and also over Teams at 5:30. So I'd really encourage members to attend and be able to ask any questions at that meeting in particular. And if for any reason any members haven't received the communications today, let me know after the meeting and I'll make sure they get to you so you've got the clarity about the decision that's been taken for our area. It goes without saying, it's business as usual for us. We're carrying on delivering great services for our communities, but obviously everything that we do will just have to be considered in the context of LGR, and we've had that conversation around prioritisation and all the things that you would expect that we would need to consider, but nothing is changing for now, and our communities will continue to receive services from us as they did yesterday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Allnut. Not other business, is it? Because, yeah. Okay.
Any other business? Okay. Thank you to Michelle for the report on that. We are not due to meet as a council until September. And we know that during August, we're going to have a sort of downtime naturally, or happens every year. So that I am concerned that although members are having a session on Monday in private to be told some detail, council is not having the opportunity until September to discuss this matter in public. And I will ask formally, because the Constitution allows me to do that in another route, to have an urgent item at council meeting next week, because this information has come out after the agenda was published. And I think it would be remiss of this council not to at least have a public discussion about the general outcome, not making any big decisions. I'm not suggesting that for 1 minute, but I think we ought to. And I think that, and I'll also be saying this in writing to the leader, that I think that this council should quickly convene a meeting for parish council leaders so that they can be appraised in the same way that we members are, particularly as great emphasis being placed in this chamber by all of us on about the impact on parishes. So I hope that Michelle can take that away as a senior officer present, because I think that should happen. I really do. We can't afford to delay on this. There's only a few months to go, and there's a huge amount of work to do. Huge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and I'm sure that point is noted. And you've indicated you've already written to or are writing to the leader to that effect. Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Holmes. It's on this matter.
It was just the same matter, and I completely agree that parish councils should be knowing what's going on. I think it's vitally important, and thank you for bringing that point up.
Okay, I'm doing the quick scan and I've decided nobody else wants to speak. And therefore, thank you everybody for your attendance tonight, and I'll now call the meeting formally to a close.